Cassidy and Ambie and Crystal, the board game blitzers, showing your favorite games.
My number 60 is the Pyramid's Deadline, which is a little game where you're building a pyramid out of little shapes and you're trying to do it before time runs out. So the way the time works is each round you roll dice and everyone picks pieces from what the dice roll. The dice have different sides of different pieces like the square or the triangle. And then you build your pyramid with those pieces. But each round there's one leftover piece that you don't use. And there's one piece, the red square, that's like a timer. And when all of those run out, then the pharaoh dies and whoever hasn't completed the pyramid loses. And then you score the remaining pyramid based on how big it is. So you can, depending on what pieces you take and what you roll, the game can last longer or shorter. So you can be trying to get a good pyramid, but also you want to make sure that you have enough time to complete your pyramid. So it's really fun and it's a spatial game, which I like. So that's the Pyramid's Deadline. My number 59 is Catacombs, which is a dexterity game with flicking. So in Catacombs, there's one player versus everyone else, and it's a dungeon crawling game. So everyone is going through a dungeon and they're different characters and they're fighting these monsters, which is controlled by the one player. And the way you fight is everyone's a little disc and you flick them and you hit the other characters, and that's how you get points, or do damage to them. And it's cool because there's an archer that has little discs, and that's his arrows, and he shoots those. There's a bunch of different monsters too that do a bunch of different things, like some have multiple hit points, some regenerate, some throw fireballs, and then there's a big boss at the end. And you go through different rooms, and you can get items too. But it's really fun because it's a flicking game for everything, but then you're also going through and adventuring. And that's Catacombs, my number 59. My number 58 is Dominion, which is a card game where you're building a deck in the game. It's called a deck building game. So you start with a small deck of cards that just has like money, and throughout the game, you're playing the cards that you have and buying cards from the middle that have more money and different powers on them. And then you add them to your deck, and each turn you draw new cards from your deck that's like changing, and then playing them and doing more things and buying more cards and eventually getting points. And I like it because your deck keeps evolving and you're trying to build your deck based on what cards are out there and trying to combo them. And in Dominion, there's a lot of different cards, and 10 cards are chosen each time, and they're available to everyone. So you know what's out there and what you can get. So everyone has like an equal opportunity to get the different cards. And I played it a lot in college, and I also played it a lot after college online a lot. So I don't actually own it anymore because it requires a lot of shuffling, but I really enjoyed playing Dominion. It's also not too hard to learn, except for there's a lot of text on the card, so each card that you're getting does something differently, but the base play is pretty simple. You just play cards and do actions and buy a card each turn. So I really like Dominion, and it's still my favorite deck builder. My number 57 is Click Clack Lumberjack, which is a children's game. It's a dexterity game where there's plastic trunk of tree and there's plastic rings around it, and it's lightly connected. So you have this wooden or plastic axe that you hit the tree trunk with, and you're trying to get the bark off of it without toppling the tree trunk parts over. The tree trunk is sliced into little rings. So you're just trying to hit it lightly, but not too lightly, because you want to get the outer part off, but not the inner part. And it's really fun, really quick game. And I've played it mostly with adults, and it's a lot of fun. So that's Click Clack Lumberjack, my number 57. My number 56 is Fuse, which is a real-time cooperative game with dice. You're trying to defuse bombs before the time runs out. So you have a deck of cards, and each card is a different bomb, and they have symbols on them saying what dice you need to defuse it. So for example, one will have like a blue square and a red square. That means you need a blue die and a red die put on there to defuse it. And there's a bag of dice and someone draws in there, pulls out the number of dice for the number of player, rolls it, and everyone has to take a die. So if you can't place a die on your card, like if I had blue and red and I got a yellow die, I can't place it, then it's bad and everyone has to put a die back, and it gets really frantic because you have to distribute the dice based on what bombs people are trying to defuse, and you can't always get the dice you need. So it's a lot of communication, but it's also timed for 10 minutes, so it's really hard. But I have a lot of fun playing Fuse. My number 55 is Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. This is actually the expansion because the game is a one-time play. It's a book, kind of, like there's a lot of text, story-based mystery game. Basically, there's a lot of different locations. You're trying to solve a murder or some other crime, and you can choose wherever you want to go. They have this directory and a map, and when you go to a location, you read a paragraph or some length of text, and it tells you what happened there. And after going through a lot of locations, you figure out how to solve the mystery or like what's happened, and then you answer questions at the end. So it's kind of like a mix between a choose your own adventure and a mystery game. They score you against Sherlock, who always does really well, and we do really terribly, but it's a lot of fun playing it because I like the mystery and the story. And the base game comes with 10 different cases, and then there's expansions that come with 10 more, I think, and we have another expansion too, but I haven't played that yet. But I really like Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, and that's my number 55. My number 54 is Tzolk'in, the Mayan calendar, which is a worker placement game where you have these pieces and you put them down on spaces on the board and you get resources and other things for putting them down. But you don't get it until a later turn. So the main cool thing about Tzolk'in is that the board is a bunch of gears, and you turn the gear and it turns all the other gears around. And so on a turn, you put pieces down, and then later, after you turn it, they've moved along the track, and they get better rewards the longer they stay on. So it's really interesting. Just seeing the gears move is really cool, but also it's good to plan where you're putting them and trying to get the better rewards. And you can also put a bunch of pieces on the same track to push your other ones up more. So I really like playing Tzolk'in. And I also painted my gears, which makes me like it more, I guess. But yeah, that's why Tzolk'in's my number 54. My number 53 is Container, which is an economic game. In Container, there are a bunch of different things you can do. You're building factories which produce goods, and then you put those in warehouses, and you can ship the goods from people's warehouses and auction them off, and then people are eventually trying to collect the different types of goods depending on how much they're worth. Each person has a hidden card that they get at the beginning that says what each color good is worth. But the really interesting part is that you can't do all of this yourself. You have to trade or you have to sell to other people. So each time you do something, you have to do it with someone else. Like, you produce a good, but you can't store it yourself. You have to sell it to someone else. And so you get to price how much it's worth, and that person will buy from you, or they might buy it from someone else where it's cheaper. So it's a lot of just internal economy changing and stuff. And the only time there's money in the game that's not from the players, like from the bank, is when you have an auction in the middle, and the person who's auctioning off all the goods that they're shipping, they auction it off to the highest bidder, and then the bank also pays money. But it's really interesting how the prices of things change as the game goes on, depending on how much money the bank has put into it, because it could be very poor with everyone being poor, or everyone being rich, depending on how the auctions go. So it's really fun and interesting because it's all player-driven economy. And that's why Container is my number 53. My number 52 is Insider, which is, I mentioned where words before, so Insider is similar in that it's like 20 questions, but there's someone who knows what the answer is, who's not the person giving the answers. And in this one, instead of the insider not wanting the people to guess, they do want the people to guess the word. So they're trying to steer people to guess the word without having the people know who the insider is. So it's pretty interesting trying to think of questions that will get people to think about the word that they're trying to guess without giving away that you know what the word is. I have a lot of fun playing it, and it's super portable, so I've played it at work and at a bar and other places, so that's why Insider is my number 52. My number 51 is Ghost Stories, which is a cooperative game where you're trying to banish ghosts from this town and protect it. So there's a deck of cards that's the ghosts, and you have to get through all of them, and there's a big bad boss at the end that you have to also get through in order to win the game. And there's tiles on the board that's the city, and each tile you can go onto and they do different actions. Also, the ghosts come on the edge of the board and you have to go next to them to banish them. So you're going to the different places, doing the different actions and trying to build up your power so you can banish the ghosts. But every turn, the ghosts keep coming and coming. So even when you banish a ghost and think you're doing well, they just keep coming. And they can also make, the way they can win is by making the tiles flip over, which will eventually kill the town, but also it deactivates their power, so it makes it harder to win. Also, each character has a special power, so that helps you a little bit, but it's really fun and really challenging. So I really like how it always feels like you're gonna lose, even if you do win. So that's why Ghost Stories is my number 51.